So we're going to continue our finance unit, and today we're going to start talking about loans, and that will include credit cards, which sometimes we don't think of as a loan, but they really are. So we're going to, you can read through all the objectives yourself, but we're going to start with a conversation here about credit cards. I have in the notes a little screen capture of some, at least at the time I did it, some, typical credit card rates. I don't think those have varied a lot, national averages, student loans, and so on. So you can kind of take a look. They can range, they're almost always in double digits, and for people with bad credit and store credit cards sometimes get up over sometimes 20%. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now, in terms of minimum payments, typically what happens with a credit card is they say, okay, you have to pay a certain percent of your balance, or once that balance gets really low, they're not going to take, $1 payments, right? So once your balance gets low, they'll say, okay, now you just have to basically pay 20 bucks or something. So whichever is more, either just some flat amount like 20 bucks or a certain percent of your balance. And so that's what we're going to focus on. And we are going to, in particular, as we go through these, I'm always going to kind of model all the credit card problems just for simplicity to kind of keep it easier on us. I'm going to have all of our credit cards when we talk about the minimum payment. It's going to be 2.5% of your balance, but not less than $20. Meaning, if you have a big balance, it'll be 2.5% of your balance on your card. But once that gets down, to something, if that was under 20 bucks, they're not going to take, $5 payments. Once that balance gets low, then they're going to say, well, now you got to send in at least 20 bucks. So whichever is more. So that's what we're going to first set up. So suppose that beginning of the semester you had to pay for tuitions and books and a computer and some sort of, maybe tablet or something. But let's just say that in total it was $2,800. And you decided you didn't have a choice. You just had to put this on your credit card, and that your credit card has a very typical rate here of 15%. And so we want to look at what your balance would be after 3 years if you only made the minimum payment. So we're going to have a spreadsheet that's going to look pretty similar to what we did with our savings, except we have to really change our mindset here. So the balance this time is a bad thing because this is a loan that we owe, and the interest, not a good thing anymore because this is what we are being charged. So these are some of the things we want to keep in mind. So we're going to have our month, our beginning balance, whatever we're sending in as our payments, and then the interest they're charging us. These two columns I could maybe have switched in reverse. We're going to kind of just assume that the monthly payment is getting sent in around the same time that, a charge is being posted. So some of these cycles of credit cards, whether when it's posted, when the payment goes in, but it's certainly, you'll get the picture. And then the end balance. All right, so suppose that we start our first month, we have a balance of $2,800. And again, I have formatted these 4 columns to be currency, just because it makes it easier to look at. So my monthly payment is going to be, we're going to use the max function. And so it's going to be, we're just going to type in MAX, max, and it's going to be the max of either 2.5% of my balance. So 0.025 times, and then cell reference your beginning balance, or comma, 20 bucks. Whichever is bigger, that is going to be my monthly payment that I'm sending in, because I'm only paying the minimum required monthly payment. So it's either 2.5% of my balance, or once my balance gets down to a smaller amount, then they're not going to take less than 20 bucks. So whichever is bigger. So right now you can see the 70 bucks is what's bigger. That's 2.5% of my balance. So the minimum monthly payment is going to be 70 bucks. All right, now the interest, they are charging me, and everything that we do with loans, now you can just concentrate on the annual interest rates here always being divided by 12. Everything we do is going to be based on monthly payments and a monthly structure here. So this is going to equal And just like it was with the savings situation, the 15%, so 0.15 as a decimal or 15 with the percent sign, and then divided by, because that's the annual interest rate, we divide it by 12 because we're breaking this down into a monthly cycle here, and then times, and then we're going to cell reference our beginning balance. So that's what they are going to charge me. So take a look at that right away. You're sending in a payment of 70, but they're going to charge you 35 in interest. So really, you've only paid down $35 on your actual balance. So that's kind of lesson number one. Think about that. Ending balance. All right, let's just reason our way through this. We're going to equal our beginning balance and now minus the payment that we just sent in, and then plus they're going to add on that interest charge. So my ending balance, unfortunately, is only $35 less, not 70, than what we started with. And then our new beginning balance is just going to be our old end balance. All right, so we want to look, and the question was what happens after 3 years? So remember, this is where we can do the double highlight to create a quick list of numbers. Hover in the lower right-hand corner, and then pull this down until you get to the 36. So that'll be 3 years, 36 months. And now go to the last single cell. These each have formulas in them. So we don't double highlight here. That's only when you want a quick list of numbers. So go to the last cells and double click to fill those columns. And again, it looks a little strange until you get everything filled because of all of the cell references that rely on each other. Okay, so where are we at after 3 years? We are at $1,780.30. So 3 years later, that was 3 years ago that I made those charges in my tuition. And what's really scary is to think about if you were continuing to use your credit card, and we'll talk about things like that later, but this was just that one time $2,800. All right, part B. So that was the result we saw right here. So we just got to that result. So that was our 1780, 30 cents. Now, how long would it, if we continued just to make this minimum monthly payment, how long is it going to take us to pay off? So let's just double highlight, extend our list down, and however many months, go to a couple hundred, and then go back up to the last cell in each of these columns and just hover in the right hand corner and click and drag or double click. So we want to see where we end up with getting a balance, this end balance, the last column. So I can see, first of all, notice it was right around month 100, month 101 actually, that it changes from 2.5% of my balance. And so once that 2.5% of my balance drops below 20 bucks, then we just have to send in $20 payments until we're paid off. And we get paid off here, it looks like by month 157 is when we actually were paid off, because that's when my balance went to a negative. All right, so again, sometimes, and I don't know why, certain times, and I've done different videos, sometimes it may just show up with a little negative like that. Sometimes Excel, it may have to do with the formatting. Maybe if it's general, no, that's still, maybe accounting is the one that goes red. No, I don't know. Sometimes it goes red and it means a negative, and then sometimes it just actually shows up with a negative here. All right, so month 156 is when I get paid off. So again, let's think about that. 156 divided by 12, 13 years later. 13 years later is when we actually get our credit card paid off if we only make the minimum monthly payment. Now, what happens in this last month is always going to be a little odd because, okay, if I only owed $769, I'm not going to send in 20 bucks. And it depends on when they posted these, 10 cent or 30 cent interest charges. But how I'm always just going to say is, okay, let's go to the last month where we went negative. And let's just say, okay, if that's all I owe, then in this last month, I'm going to just send in that balance that I have remaining. So what's in B157 there, that 769, that's what I owe, that's what I'd send. And we'll assume at that point they're not charging me any interest, or if I did, I'd pay that too. So I'm not going to worry a lot if somebody doesn't do this. Again, just the idea that it's taken us to 13 years, I'm not going to worry about the difference in $7 if a student doesn't do that. But you can kind of see that's what I did over here in the notes. So it was, again, by the 156 month that we would have been totally paid off, or 13 years if we only made the minimum payment. So that's frightening, 13 years. And keep in mind, we're not even adding anything into this credit card balance, which is always what happens as people continue to charge up their cards. Now let's think about, well, what did I actually pay in interest? I mean, 13 years is one thing, but what did I pay in interest? So the interest is this column D. And so we are going to do the equals at the bottom of that column, and we are going to do that auto sum. So that's in the top ribbon up here. So remember, if you tap on that with your left mouse button twice, it will do your auto sum of that column. So $2,315.86 is an insane amount that we would have actually been charged in interest. Keep in mind, the actual loan was only for $2,800, not that much more than that. So we end up spending $2,300 additional dollars for that loan, which is what a credit card is, for $2,800. Not a good idea. So lesson number one, we do not want to just pay the minimum monthly payment. Gets us into trouble. That's why credit cards love us, is that they make a lot of money. So now suppose you have another credit card with a slightly lower interest rate. So this time it is an 11.62%. So let's just look at, again, suppose we still were just making the minimum monthly payment. I just want us to look at the difference between what was a 15% credit card versus an 11.62% credit card. So I'm going to go back up. I'm doing the thing that I always caution you against doing. But if I just change, everything's going to stay the same except for the interest. So I'm just going to change that 0.15 into a 0.1162. But I want you to notice something here. When I hit enter, that has only changed this first value in column D, cell D2. I have not changed what's going on down here. Look at in cell D3, I'm still at this 15%. And a good clue that this is happening, the interest shouldn't be $27 in the first month and then basically $34.46, $34.03. The interest should always be pretty close. I mean, it's going to change by small amounts. It's not going to jump up by a huge amount and then stay very close for the next few months. So once you change that cell, you do need to refill that column to change the interest in all of the cells. And again, tap on these cells and look what you see in the formula bar. They are now changed. All right, so let's look and see when we get this one paid off. So I'm looking for when we go negative. And so there it is, right around month 133. So as we look at this one, it takes us 133 months, or just a little over 11 years. So we've just cut 2 years off of that credit card just by using a slightly lower interest rate, 11.62. So that's helpful. Now, in terms of the interest that we pay, again, if I look back at this realistically speaking, what's probably going to happen is I'm not going to send in month 133 a check for 3 cents. What was probably going to happen was going to be up here in month 132, I owed 1983, and so I would have sent in 1983, and we'll just assume then that when I sent that in, I'm paid off, no more interest, and so I would have probably been paid off and really by month 132. So actually, month 132. Now we're at 11 years exactly. Now, if we wanted to compare the interest amount that we paid for that loan, so again, if I go to the bottom of that interest column and I do my auto sum, 1481.02 as opposed to so I'm now paying 1481 as opposed to 2315. So using a slightly lower interest credit card, if you're only making the minimum payment, really had a dramatic difference on what we paid overall when I was only making the minimum monthly payment. $800 plus difference. Okay, so that's another lesson. Pay attention to the interest rates on your credit cards, especially if you know, gosh, I'm not able to pay this off in full. I'm going to be making, some payments on this. That interest becomes really important when you're making payments, certainly if you're only making minimum payments. All right, but now suppose the same credit card here, you have decided that you've learned your lesson about just making these minimum payments, and you've decided that you want to try to pay it off in 1 year. So let's think about what that might look like if I was trying to get it paid off in a year. So one thing we could start with is a guess and check kind of idea would be to say, well, what would I have to pay for monthly payments? So right now I'm making a monthly payment of $70 here. So suppose I said I'm trying to pay it off in 1 year. Really loosely, if I have $2,800 and I divide that by 12, so at least $233 payments. So let's say I change my payments and I say I'm going to make, because I know there's going to be some interest, suppose I make $240 payments each month. Again, that only changed the first payment. Let's refill here. Now I am trying to pay this off in 12 months. So this time I'm going to delete everything under 12. That still leaves me with a little over $100 there. So I'd have to go higher than 240. And so, we might go up to 245 again, refill that whole column. Now I'm getting closer, $41 and so on. So maybe I go to $249. I'm kind of looking at what I have in the notes and I get even closer. I'm down to just like $9. I'm paid off, actually. So, somewhere around there. Now, again, this is a lot of trial and error. It's kind of a pain if I wanted to get it to the nearest penny. We really want a more accurate way to do that. So a more efficient way is going to be to use an Excel function. This one is going to be the PMT or the payment function. So I want you to keep clear in your mind that the FV function, as well as the effect function, but FV was for when we did investments and savings. The PMT is going to be the main, maybe the only Excel function we use for our loans that we're going to talk about. So that's going to be the one we're going to use here. So we're just going to go to any empty cell and I'm going to type in equals. I'm going to go to my FX, my functions. And again, if you want to use a category, it's in the finance menu. You can arrow down until you get there. If you want to hit the letter P, that'll at least take you down to the P's. So there it is, PMT. Calculates the payment for a loan. Yep, that's what I want. Based on, in this case, definitely, I want to make regular payments. I'm done with that minimum balance stuff. I've learned my lesson. And a constant interest rate. Yes, that all sounds appropriate. So let's go through and see what it tells me. Rate. Interest rate per period. Again, here's my reminder. I need to divide by whatever types of payments. Everything I do in the loans is going to be based on monthly payments. So our rate here is going to be the 11.62%, or type in 0.1162 yourself, but divided by 12, that's key. All of our loans are going to be divided by 12. N per, total number of payments in the loan. Okay, so let's think about this. In this example, I want us paid off in 1 year. That's just 12 monthly payments. Now, the PV, present value. So it is the present value, the total amount that I owe on this credit card, this loan, which is $2,800. And the other two we're going to leave blank. This is the future value. We're going to always assume we want to be completely paid off, and that's going to assume to be 0. The type again has to do with when the payment's made. So there's a little difference there in small amounts. We're not going to worry about that. So we're going to hit OK. And I'm going to make that column a little wider. I knew it came back red sometimes. So in this one, it came back red. And that is what I hate about Excel, because this is actually signifying a negative number. So I want to be super careful about ever cell referencing that. So here's what I now just determined, 248.28. So let's type that into my spreadsheet and just kind of verify that. So 248.28, and then refill that and look at what I have. Yeah, to the nearest penny. That's as good as they can get it for a regular payment. And so that means, again, all this will be in your notes when you need to refer back, either use the video or your notes there. And so the 248.28 is the balance, or I'm sorry, is the monthly payment to pay the balance off in a year. So now, if I wanted to determine the total amount of money that's paid and the amount paid in interest. So keep in mind, this is often a question I'm asking where I'm not looking for you to create a spreadsheet. So let's just think about if this is all I had. So the total amount I pay, well, if I am paying every month, if I am paying $248.28 and I am doing that for 12 months, then the total that I am paying is going to be this $2,979.36. And then if I am looking at the amount that I actually pay in interest, okay, well, if I ended up spending a total of this $29.79, that's how much I had to pay in total. The interest is going to be whatever is above and beyond what the loan was for, which was that $2,800. So the interest amount is $179.36. And it looks like I'm off by like a cent maybe in my notes. Sometimes what happens too, so this is where I'm cautioning you to not cell reference this value. Sometimes what happens if people go against my advice and cell reference it, for the multiplication, it's not bad, it's fine. So this is probably honestly what I did here. It's when you get to the next step where you're going to be subtracting something. So if you were to say, oh, I'm going to take that total and then subtract 2,800, that's the problem, right? Look at that. That doesn't make sense because this number was actually a negative number. So that's when you run into some problems. You can cell reference it for the multiplication. Again, that's probably what I did here. So why are these two off by a penny? Take a look at, in this case, what is often happening. I wonder if I change this from currency to general. Behind the scenes, this number was actually using a more specific set of decimal expansions, and that's why sometimes we're off. Again, we're talking pennies, and so we're not going to really worry so much about that. The other thing to think about is oftentimes what happens with a lot of loans is the payoff balance. Like if you ever have a car loan, and we'll do a car loan example. A lot of times you have to call like the day you're paying it off, and they will actually figure out how much interest you owe like up to that day. So the payoffs at the end are always, a little off, maybe a penny or so. All right, but here's the point. Paying off in a year was certainly a good idea if we could do it. We only spent $180 basically in interest, as opposed to the thousands that we were spending. Now it's not always possible, but you always want to think about some tips with credit cards. Try to just, especially initially when you're just trying to build credit, which is what credit cards can do. So using credit cards is a way to establish credit. It shows that you're okay to pay back money. And so if you do need a car loan and maybe some point you do want to buy a house or something, establishing good credit is important. When you're first getting started, stick with just one card. Try to find something that's low interest, that doesn't have an annual fee, things like that. Do your best to pay off those balances in full each month, and keep in mind these really are loans and they are charging you for it. If you can't get it paid off in full, we all have things that come up. Um, just try to make as large of payments as possible and try not to continue to run that up. Um, don't use it for cash advances. A lot of times the rates on that, again, unless it's an emergency, know your credit card rate. We're going to look at some what we call teaser rates that often happens, especially with store credit cards. All right, let's look at one more example here with a credit card. And so in this one, what we have, going over to example 4 here, this is one of those teaser rates I'm talking about. So in this example, I'm saying, suppose you go to Lowe's and your refrigerator went out and you need a refrigerator, right? And you're checking out and they offer you something. They say, you can get either 5% off or some special financing. And so with their credit card, if you're making a minimum of a $299 purchase, then they are going to give you some special financing. So what is this special financing that we're talking about? The special financing is free. Isn't that great? Free money, no interest. That's the special financing. But here's the key. No interest if you are paid off in full in 6 months. And the problem is what often happens is if you are not paid off full in 6 months, then you are going to be charged from the beginning of the purchase date. So people sometimes they miss that and maybe they're almost paid off, but they don't get it totally paid off. They will be charged from the purchase date. Also, sometimes people just really overestimate their ability to pay something off and they have other expenses that come up and all of a sudden they're back to, well, let's just make the minimum monthly payment. It happens more than that's how people get into credit card trouble, right? Nobody wants to be there, but that's how it often happens. So this is actually a screen capture, and this is nothing against Lowe's. I love Lowe's. This is pretty typical. Free financing for 6 months, but you read the fine print, and the fine print is if you don't pay it off in 6 months, you get charged interest from the purchase date, and that interest is pretty high, almost 25%. Okay, higher than what is probably on your traditional credit card that's in your wallet. So that's what we need to be careful of. It can be a great deal for 6 months. It is what they're saying. It's no interest for 6 months. But if you don't pay off in 6 months, it's going to be a problem, especially if you have to get back to just like a minimum payment thing. That would be a little concerning. So oftentimes, if we can't do that, a regular card in your wallet may have been a better choice. So let's look at the difference. Suppose we have a $1,500 purchase, some sort of appliance or something. And suppose that we decide that right now I can put $50 a month towards that. So suppose I'm going to put in $50 monthly payments. So that's what I can pay. It's free for 6 months. So but I've decided I'm going to make my $50 payments. Now, suppose that we're just going to use this APR here of 25%. So my interest charge, this would be equals, remember, you can always just use the percent sign if you prefer. So 25% divided by 12, that's your monthly payment, or the monthly interest rather, and then times what your beginning balance is. So $31 in interest, and then your ending balance will be your beginning balance minus that payment you just sent in plus that interest they're going to charge you. And then you'll start off your new month with where your old month left off. So let's go ahead and look at what, if I could only in fact afford monthly payments of $50, how long would this take me to pay off if I could only make those $50 payments? So let's go ahead and fill the spreadsheet here and see where that takes me. So it looks like I get paid off by month 48. So 4 years, that's not great, right? So 4 years to pay it off. So not good. If we think about roughly, again, at the end, I probably would just be making that last payment and we'll assume no interest there at the end. So if I look at the total of all of my payments, So if I was to use this APR of 25%, the total, so if I say what's the total of all of my payments, I would have been sending in a total of $2377.97. So in total, that would have been my, grab my pen here, sorry. So that's going to be my 23, it's a 3, 77.97. Just jot that down here. Sorry, that's sloppy. Let me erase that. Do that again. All right, so this is my 2377.97. All right. Now let's just change this to an APR of 15%. So let's go back in. Interest, let's change it from 25% to 15%, which is a common credit card rate for a standard credit card you might have in your wallet. We need to refill that interest column. Now let's see how long that would take us to pay off. So now looks like we've saved ourselves some time and, more importantly, money. So let's look at this last month again. I would just pay off whatever my balance is. We'll assume we don't get charged the interest there. So again, let's look at, in this case, what would I spend? So notice here I'm finding what I'm spending in total. So $1891.27. So with my 15% purchase, I would have spent a total of, so with the APR of 15%, so this one, move down a little bit here. So in this situation, I spent a total of $1891.27. So remember, let's keep in mind here for a second, sometimes I will ask you, like, what did you pay in total? So that's what these numbers are. So these are both the total that we paid. So that includes both the paying back of the original amount, which was that, what, $1,500, and the interest that they charged me. So now if I want to figure out the difference, you can just subtract then these two different total values. So I would have my 2377.97 minus the 1891.27. And so the difference, which will be the difference in interest, because obviously the principal, the 1500, is the same in both cases. So that ended up being a difference of $486.70. So if I was not able, and like to really make those bigger payments to get it paid off quicker, if I could only, so if I'm sitting here about to make a big purchase and I figure I can only make $50 payments, like I look at my budget, I can squeeze out an extra $50 a month right now. If that's all I can reasonably afford to pay a month, it would have been much better just to go with my traditional credit card that was in my wallet. It would save me, almost $500 in that situation. All right, so the very last example, I'm sorry this is a longer video, I just want to get through this one last example here. Example 5 is a similar example, it's just a car loan instead. So let's just look at same principle of using the payment function, the same idea. So these are some, at the time that I made these notes anyway, some common rates here for auto loans. So suppose that you're buying a used car, it's $13,000. You got an annual interest rate of 2.95% for 4 years. So let's figure out what our monthly payment would be. So equals, your payment should be in your recently used if you've used it now. So our rate here is the 2.95%. Again, all loans will be divided by 12. This is a 4-year car loan, so 48 months. Used to be car loans were typically 3 years, and then they've went to 4 years, and now you even see 5-year and sometimes 6-year loans. Not a great idea, but they are out there. and I am financing. So financing means getting a loan for $13,000. Maybe I put a couple thousand down. Maybe it was a $15,000 car, but I'm getting a loan for that $13,000. So my monthly payment is going to be $287.46. Now suppose that you tell the car dealer, like, I really like this car, but right now I can only afford a payment at most of $200. And this is where he comes back at you and he says, okay, no problem. I can get you under $200. We'll just do a 6-year or 72-month loan. So notice over here, I just copy and drag that exact same payment into another cell because I wanted to keep that one. And now if I just go into either the formula bar or right here, it's the same. We're assuming the same percent, although I'll be honest, sometimes when you get longer loans like that, sometimes they increase the percent a little bit. But this time, instead of doing it in 4 years, I'm going to do it in 6 years, which is 72 months. So that's the only thing I'm going to change here. So now I'm down to a magical 197.23. So it seems good, right? I'm under where I want to be, and car dealers are really good at making it work like that. But let's think about how much we'd pay in interest with each loan. So in the first situation, let's think about the total that, and I'm not going to make a table here or anything yet. I'm just going to first figure out my total, and that's going to be the 287.46 times, and that was for 48 months. And so that means the amount that I am going to be charged in interest, that is going to equal the total amount that I end up, that's all the payments I just sent in, is at $13,798 minus what the loan was for, which was $13,000. So in this situation, I end up paying $798.08. So that's how much we spend in interest with the first loan, which was the 48-month loan. Now, in the second loan, the total that I spend is going to equal my 197.23. That's when I'm sending in every month, but this time I'm doing it for 72 months. And so I end up spending $14,200 instead of, $13,800 roughly. And now maybe to you, you're like, that's not that big of a difference, and I really want this car, right? And so that's where a lot of times for some people, they just think, hey, it's worth it, right? So I'm going to take my 14,000 number up here and subtract what the loan was for, which was the 13,000. So what I spent in interest then on the second loan, so actually let me erase those. Okay, so what I spent, I didn't leave myself any room there. So what I spent in interest on the first loan, so that was the $1,200.56. So that was for not the first loan, that was the second one, the longer one, the 72-month loan. That was how much I end up being charged in interest, minus the shorter loan, which was for 4 years, which again, car loans, ask your parents or whatever. Typically, it was always just like 3 years. That's the $798.08. Oh, I guess I just asked for how much you would pay in each. I guess I didn't ask for the difference. Read my own question, huh? So this is what it was with the first one, and that's what it was with the second one. Sorry. Okay, now, so this is the 72-month loan, and this is for the 48-month loan. All right. And so you can just kind of reasonably see that you have approximately like a $400 difference, right? And again, some people are like, whatever, that's just like a couple of months on a payment. Like, I'd rather have this nice car. So other factors that you want to think about in particular for a used car is going to be, could could you potentially end up upside down on this? Meaning, is there going to come a point where you're going to owe more than the car is worth? So that's one of the things that you want to kind of think about. So at some point in the loan, could you end up in a situation? So could you end up owing more than the car is worth? So why is that such a big deal? So could you end up owing more? So here's the issue that you want to think about in something like this. Um, is that oftentimes used cars, which I've always bought used cars, by the way, but you have to be careful. Is a lot of times it's depending on how used it is. Um, if you end up owing more than it's worth, and then you also have repairs on top of it, that can be a problem. Oftentimes people get to, and this is really what's an issue, is a lot of times people get to a point they've had this used car, it was already used, and now it's 4 or 5 years later and they want to trade it in. They're tired of this car. They want something new. And there's implications then from if I still owe more than it's worth, then what dealers will often do is they'll just roll that into your next loan. And it seems magical because now you walk out with a new car. But if you actually were forced to still continue to write monthly payment checks to a car you didn't have anymore, and then also make monthly payment checks to this new car you've bought, that's what often ends up happening is people get 5 years into it. They want something new and they go get something new, and these car dealers just roll that into your new loan. And so you're still paying off a car you don't have. This can also be an issue, obviously, like if you end up with repairs that are beyond what the car is even worth, like you still have a loan and these repairs are more than it's worth, and you're kind of in an upside down situation. Or if hopefully not, but you end up in a car accident. These are the things that you want to think about with really dragging out those payments. Um, so I'm not going to do this for right now. We're going to look at this more with mortgages, just in the interest of time. I've let this video go twice as long as I should have. So next time we're going to talk about amortization tables. We'll do that specifically with mortgages. And mortgages are basically just really big loans. They're loans for houses. So they're going to be really large loans. So in group activity 20, let me just take a quick look. I don't think I want to take anything off of that. Yeah, I'm going to leave that whole thing there. So you'll be ready to do group activity 20. Next time we're going to come back and we're going to talk about mortgages. So that'll be the last lesson in our finance unit next time.